To create and maintain healthy and productive processes, leader-standard work is absolutely key. To effectively engage people in change, getting them to do something new, unique, or different, we must define the behavior we expect for managing the process. Therefore, we need leader-standard work. It doesn't matter what our process is, whether it's easy or difficult. If we expect the normal process to change, a fundamental requirement is to decide how the process owner and the leader of the process will manage the new process.
Here's a story. A new engineer was very gung-ho about implementing a new process where she had completed a 4-month Greenbelt project. Among the many improvements designed and implemented, a Visual Performance Management, or VPM board was developed. The process owner, one of the supervisors, was supposed to collect daily information each time a particular event occurred in the process and post it on the board. The data collection never happened. The project and the process owner's role were not on the radar of the site leader, so there was no consequence or corrective action. The process quickly backslid to its old ways. The new engineer blamed the process owner for not following her instructions, then the improvements dissolved, and the project was a big, gigantic waste of time. The end.
Sounds familiar? How might leader-standard work have prevented this failure? Leadership behavior must be specific and explicit and is a must-have for any improvement to have a chance of sustained success. Clear communication and a decisive set of tasks and accountabilities would have helped in the engineer's failed project. Left to his or her own devices, most leaders will do whatever it takes to get the job done. But what are the chances that any given leader's random behavior will support the new process thoroughly? Not likely at all. If we expect the normal process to change, a fundamental requirement is to decide how the process owner and the leaders of the process will manage the new process. But how can leaders possibly devote the right amount of attention to every one of the tasks that need to be done? It's done by creating a schedule for the most important tasks.
Defining critical tasks in a process engages people in the new process in a way that defines behaviors. Whether the activities are every shift, or daily, or once a week, through defining the process of managing the process, the leader gets engaged. And if the leader gets engaged, the workers will as well. Through leader-standard work, learning happens. We get smarter about how the process works, what works and what doesn't. Questions get raised and addressed. Small incremental improvements are allowed to happen every day. And isn't that the whole point of continuous improvement? When it's done right, leader-standard work creates a culture of ownership, responsibility, and accountability. This fosters empowerment across all levels of the organization.
A core aspect of leader-standard work is ensuring that standard processes and procedures are in place and are consistently followed at all levels of the organization. Standard work must be built from the bottom up, starting with the work that is done at employee or operator level, because this is closest to where value is being created for the customer, and then building up to executive level. As we work up the ladder, the amount of time spent on standard work decreases, but the value and importance is just as important. For example, the workers closest to the process would typically spend about 95% of their work on standardized tasks. Those tasks would include following the procedures of the new process, identifying problems like delays, waste, issues with quality, and they would also participate in the regular problem solving by playing their part in Visual Performance Management, or VPM, meetings. Team leaders, for example, might spend around 80% of their time on standardized tasks. This would include things like shift handovers, problem solving, administrative tasks, and supervisory checks to make sure that the operators or workers are following standard procedures.
Middle managers would be about 50%. At this level, there are still parts of the work that are standardized, especially between managers in different departments, for example. Standardized tasks would be things like meetings, problem solving, reporting, and then making sure that the team leaders are following standard procedures. This could be done through Gemba walks or assessments or simple checklists. The primary focus of the middle manager is to support the team leaders, but they still provide coaching to the people on the front line of the process.
Even at site leadership level, there's a fair amount of standardized work, about 25%. Activities that are common between leaders at this level should be standardized too, including meetings, problem solving, reporting, and admin tasks. Additionally, there should be routine, structured activities to verify that middle managers are following their standard procedures and standard work. This can be executed through direct observation and reviewing of standardized documentation. Site leaders' primary focus is on middle managers, but there is still some coaching that should take place at all levels.
For executive leaders, roughly 10% of their time is spent on standardized tasks. Executive leaders should have a standard process that they use for strategy development and goal setting, as well as reporting and financial controls. Additionally, they should include routine frequency Gemba walks at all sites for which they are responsible. Their primary focus is on leading site leaders, but some coaching should take place at all levels.
Imagine if the team had put in the effort to solve a problem with a process, but the new solution wasn't supported by all of the team leads, and some employees continue to run the process their own way. The manager isn't aware of the new improvement and doesn't have any idea of what is actually happening on the front line of the process. The site director is even further disconnected, and by this time there's very little, if any, alignment or support from executive leaders. It's not hard to see what would happen in a very short time. The team will have very little chance of success. The process would likely backslide and people will chalk it up to, yeah, we've tried continuous improvement, but it doesn't work. We've heard that so many times. But remember, leaders cannot support or verify standards unless those standards have been developed where the work is actually done. Building from the bottom up ensures that the process is aligned and supported all the way up the chain. When done well, people at all levels are focused on maintaining the process and standards, understanding the behaviors that drive the right outcomes, check that standard work is being followed, and continually improving standard work by addressing deviations.
It's likely that you've experienced working in an organization without leader standard work. We can tell you what these organizations look like. Leaders push back, thinking that standardization will hinder their ability to solve a crisis. But standardization is precisely what prevents problems from reoccurring. Critical tasks are squeezed into the margins of the day, that is, if they get done at all. Great leadership, the kind that inspires, energizes, and grows the organization, even in times of crisis, is only possible if there's a structure in place that keeps processes moving along efficiently while freeing up time to drive value-added actions. Without creating and sticking to a routine, work becomes chaotic and everything's a priority. We're not ready to handle the unexpected, and we spend a ton of time making repetitive decisions. Although it may sound like the opposite, having a schedule gives you freedom. You know what tasks to focus on and when, no exception. As a result, you'll knock these responsibilities out during the time you're allotted. That means that there will be other times throughout the day where you have nothing scheduled. It's during these periods where you're free to go with the flow. With established leader standard work, over time, the schedule will give you a baseline on how long it actually takes to complete specific tasks. You can use this knowledge to build more realistic blocks of time. For example, if you've been blocking out an hour for checking your email and it takes you closer to 2, then you can adjust your schedule. If you realize that you're spending too much time on less critical tasks, you may want to delegate those tasks to somebody else. And one thing that might be surprising, and that is that standard work creates a stable enough environment to allow for spontaneity and creativity. The day is no longer full of juggling tasks because now there's a structure for what tasks to focus on and when. The team is supported at all levels and work is happening as it should.
There are a few common misconceptions about leader standard work, starting with this one. It's a dictate from above. The development of standard work should be done by the people who actually do the work. Certainly some items like safety or compliance requirements are non-negotiable, but to the extent possible, it's important that the people who will perform the work have a hand in its development. They likely know what works best and will be more open to standardization if they are involved.
Another misconception is that it has to be overly complicated. We've seen organizations get a bit carried away and introduce an unnecessary level of complexity to standard work. It doesn't necessarily need to detail every step of every task. It needs only to be concerned with the things that impact the ultimate result of the work. This is especially true for project-focused leader standard work, which should focus on those tasks necessary at each level to support the newly improved process and drive to results.
Leader standard work is never set in stone. As part of a continuous improvement method, having a standard work process that never changes is the opposite of improvement. The standard work represents what is known to be the best practices for achieving a particular objective today. If new information is discovered or if the scenario changes, the standard work must also evolve.
And lastly, it's not a substitute for good judgment. Employees need enough context to recognize when the standard work is misaligned with the best interest of the organization. Just as importantly, they also have to be empowered to speak up about it. A lot of things are ridiculous when taken to the extreme, and standard work can certainly be one of them. But that doesn't mean it should be abandoned. Documenting the best practices for standard tasks at every level ensures consistent, predictable outcomes.
In your workbooks is a template for leader standard work. Lucky you! This is a simple and flexible template that can be used at any level of the organization. At the top of the form is a person's name, the owner, and their role or title. The light yellow fields indicate free-form text, and these are where we capture the tasks that need to be done daily, weekly, monthly, and annually. Of course, insert rows as needed to create room for more tasks. In each of the sections is a place to document the dates, daily, weekly, or monthly. The light green cells indicate a drop-down list. The drop-down has two simple options, done or not done. If the task was completed on time, it's done, which will turn the cell green. If the task was not completed on time, the select not done, and the cell will turn red. Red does not equal bad. Rather, it's an opportunity to assess the schedule and determine why the task was not completed. For example, a manager may have on his or her standard work to check on the standard work of the team leader. If the team leader is showing that he or she has consistent reds with tasks, they can do some problem solving. They will collaborate to each and either adjust the task, adjust the owner, or the time allotted. As with all of your templates, this form can be completed and shared physically or electronically. It's pretty simple to fill out. The skill is in using it and continually improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the teams supporting your new process.
Despite its simplicity, few companies have successfully implemented leader standard work. It helps to act as a reminder of important work that we want to complete each day, week, month, or quarter. It keeps us more balanced in the allocation of our time toward completing critical work. It's also a helpful resource that we can refer to when we have scheduled time for deep work during the work week. Properly using leader standard work will result in fewer balls dropped.